Evening, everyone. Um, just want to uh, continue tonight talking about faith because we're in a series in our life groups at Emmanuel and also our Sunday Sunday. Someone keeps muting me. Doreen, stop muting me. I haven't stopped. It's not. It might be better than you think. You don't have to mute me. So yes, and so on these Tuesdays, just talking about faith, but not treading on the toes of what we're doing on Sundays. And at the moment, I'm just in Hebrews chapter 11, looking at the examples of Old Testament characters that lived by faith and were blessed by God and pleased God. It's impossible, Hebrews says, to please God except by faith. And that means we have to believe that he is who he says he is, that he can do what he says he can do, and that he's trustworthy. So we have to believe that he is, but also, which is wonderful, that he's a rewarder of those who seek him as he really is. God loves to reward. And Hebrews is full of teaching on rewards and pressing in and believing God to take our version of the promised land and not to fall back or hold back or to have unbelief like the children of Israel did and stayed in the wilderness for 40 years. So we get to this Hebrews chapter 11, Faith's Hall of Fame. And the Hebrews author is going through the Bible and he's picking people that he wants to use as examples for the New Testament believers, especially these Hebrews who were a Jewish congregation that were being persecuted and were in danger of backsliding and saying it's just too hard being a Christian. So he wanted to encourage their faith. So I don't know how long we'll be in this. I'm just enjoying it at the moment, but I want to talk today about I want to talk about by faith Noah, the faith of Noah. We've looked at the faith of Abel, and now I want to look at the faith of Noah. We also here is a description. Here's Hebrews 11 verse 7. By faith Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became the heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. And each time we look at one of these examples of faith, there's something unique in their story that's recorded. And the author of Hebrews, he doesn't spend time on each one of these. They only get one or two verses. And so he is summarizing in a nutshell what each of these people have done. And so we need to look closely to expand, because this is telling us what faith is about. You may remember that at the beginning of the chapter 11 of Hebrews, it has a definition of faith. Faith is the substance of things not seen, the evidence of the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. And this not seen, hoped for, is a very important theme in the faith of Hebrews. You're believing in something that's not yet seen, but you've got substance, spiritual substance of what you're hoping for. And so there's a sense that faith deals with the present by looking at the future. And faith changes how we live in the present, but we're looking at the future. Something has not happened yet, and we're living in the light of something that's not yet happened but been promised. So one definition of faith, I guess, just off the top of my head, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You could say that faith is living in the light of something that has not yet come. Living in the light of something that has not yet come. Living as though something that has not come has as good as happened in the way that you're dealing with life. And so here's Noah, and he gets told that there's going to be rain and he should build an ark. And so how does he live by faith? Well, he lives in the light that there's a rain coming, and in the light of the rain coming, he begins to build an ark. So he is spending all his time and his priorities and his daily life is dominated by faith in something that has not yet happened, but is going to happen, has not yet happened. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, prepared an ark. And so let me go to what Jesus said about this in Matthew 24, verse 38. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. And so he's drawing a parallel. So Noah knew that there was the rain was coming. Nobody believed him. Nobody believed that there was going to be rain in the desert, let alone a flood. And so he lived in a desert and he built an ark in the desert where there was no rain. And everybody else was living as if there was never going to be a rain. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were divorcing, they were getting married again. And they just were oblivious to this future because they had nothing tangible of the future to believe in. But Noah had faith in what God had told him and the promises of God. And so he lived and worked and prioritized in the light of what he believed and knew would come. And Jesus, in Matthew 24 passage, says that this is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. They knew nothing about what happened, and the flood came and took them all away. So immediately we can say to ourselves that Jesus is coming soon. He's going to return. And when Jesus returns physically to this earth with his holy angels, he's coming as judge. It's the flood times 100 million. It's bigger than the flood. It's eternal judgment. He's coming again. And yet people are living around, don't believe in God, don't care about God, aren't interested in this. Then they're living in unbelief. And even some of God's people, we can be asleep to the fact that judgment's coming. What is the first message of the New Testament? Do you know what the first message? The first message of the New Testament, do you know what it is? Flee from the wrath to come. Flee from the wrath to come. That's the first message of the New Testament, John. Flee from the wrath to come. Very few people believe there's wrath on the way. They don't believe in God. And increasingly, in the modern church, Western church, many Christians don't believe there's any wrath coming. They don't believe in wrath. They don't believe in hell. They don't believe in judgment. They think God is just gooey love and would never hold anybody accountable. But anybody that reads the Old Testament knows that God holds people accountable, and the New Testament. And so we got this picture of maybe we can be encouraged by Noah and say to ourselves, oh, okay, Noah adjusted his life and his priorities and his purposes because of a rain that was coming, and he saved himself and his family. How much do we need to adjust our lives knowing that Jesus is returning? Are we as Christians going to carry on eating and drinking and marrying and many non-Christians and many Christians, unfortunately, get divorced. So we're going to continue, just like the world, without any reference or thought that actually something's coming in the future that people need to be prepared for. And so we see that Noah was divinely warned of things not yet seen, and then he did something about it. He really believed that this was going to happen. By faith, he prepared an ark. He spent his life preparing from what he had been warned of. Things not yet see it, things not yet seen. It's such a theme. Not yet seen, not yet seen, not yet seen, will be seen one day. And you've not yet seen it, but you believe it. And because you believe it, you act in response to it. Another thing that we see is that he was moved with godly fear. Look at that. Moved with godly fear. And that's something, isn't it? He really did think through what was going to happen, and it scared him. It scared him. And one of the things that is missing in the Western church today is this sense of godly fear. This sense of godly fear. Godly fear is clean. Godly fear is good. We're not talking about slavish fear. For the Christian, we're not speaking about fear of condemnation, but we're talking about a godly fear of what's going to happen to unsaved people, rebellious nations, and there's a godly fear that God's judgment is going to come in its full form when Jesus returns, but also God does judge the world today. Sooner or later, judgment visits individuals, cities, nations, just as it did in the old days, in the Old Testament. Judgment comes. It comes. God has his way of judging nations that are arrogant before him. He has his way of bringing down empires that flaunt themselves. And so Noah was moved, it says, with godly fear. When was the last time you or I were moved by godly fear? Godly fear. When was the last time the fear of the Lord came upon you in any measure? We hear people having godly fear and trembling in the Lord, and not condemnation fear, but just a sense of incredible awareness of who God is, and not just that he is the God of love, but also that he is the just God, the vengeful God, the God that will bring retribution on all of those that do not bow the knee to him and receive his son. And so, he wasn't just building an ark like a pleasure cruise. He was building an ark because he knew what was coming, and it was real. And it was like he was called in Peter a preacher of righteousness, a preacher of righteousness. So he was actually telling others. They didn't believe him, but he was telling others, it's coming. I'm telling you, I'm building this because it's coming. I'm a preacher of righteousness. Repent, get yourself ready. Flee from the wrath to come. Get yourself something. They were not interested at all, until it took place. The other thing was that this faith of being warned of things not yet and moved by a godly fear to prepare for what was coming, this caused him to be unique in his generation. Totally, he stood out in his generation. And what was it that caused him to stand out? It was his faith. It was his morality. It was the fact that he was different than those around him. But why was he different to everybody around him? Why? Because he believed God. That's why. And so when we look at a little bit more about Noah. In Genesis 6, verse 5 to 8, look at the generation and how Noah is contrasted with the generation. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things and birds of the air. But I am sorry, for I have made them. I'm sorry I've made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. I mean, that's tremendous faith, isn't it? Because to be the only man in the world that kept the faith, the only man in the world that kept the faith, when all the natural evidence is that God is not powerful, God it does not judge, God does not care, God will not intervene, we can do whatever we want, total violence on the earth, all kind of sin, all kinds of horrible things, and God doing nothing, and Noah just looking at it all, overwhelmed by it all, and yet, in the midst of his generation, uniquely he finds grace in the eyes of the Lord. What faith that must have been. What faith and grace was upon him. He found grace, he believed. He said, I'm not going to be like everybody else, even though it looks like they're getting away from it, even though it looks like there is no God, even though it looks like the truths that have been passed down to him don't matter anymore, even though it looks like these people are in control and that there is no God and they're acting as if there is no God and no morality. He found grace in the eyes of the Lord. He stood out. He was unique. And so there's a sense also that we too, with the fear of the Lord, with being warned of things to come, that we too should be different to those that are around us. I don't know why we want to give this message. We're just like you. I'm a normal person. I'm just like you, only I happen to go to church. I'm a normal person. I'm just like you, only I happen to read my Bible. No, I'm nothing like you. You're not a Christian, and I am nothing like you. My values are absolutely opposite to yours. My beliefs are absolutely opposite to yours. I love you. I care about you, but I'm not one of the boys. I'm not one of the people. I'm not here to be like you and think that if you think I'm just like you, if you think Christians are just like non-Christians, that somehow that's going to attract you. No, Christianity is a counter-cultural movement. All these people wanting to cross a cultural divide and having all these conferences on how to connect across cultural communication and all these things. Of course, it's important to speak the language of the culture, but all we want to say in the language of the culture is this: we are totally and utterly different than you. That's what we want to say. And that was the faith of Noah. And I think today Britain is going down the drain, and the Western world's going the drain so fast that actually people are looking for something different. They're fed up with what's happening in media, politics. They're fed up with all this, all these extreme philosophies. They're fed up with all of these things, the deconstruction of family, all these things. It's like they're fed up with the elitists telling them what to do all the time. And there's an opportunity for something different. People are getting an appetite back for something different. They're fed up with the false religions they've been brought on. There's an appetite. They're saying, is there anything different out here? And there are Noahs on the earth today. He built an ark, and he was practical. He got on with it. It wasn't some super spirituality. It was, this is going to happen and I need to do something about it. And so Noah was intensely practical. He wasn't living in his little Christian ghetto. He was preparing and living his life practically in the light, by faith, of what God had told him to do. And his righteousness, it says he prepared an ark for the saving of his household. He influenced his household, those that were close to him. And you see, our faith will affect others. It not just us, but will affect others. And so Noah's faith was not just about him, but Noah's faith was about his family. Noah's faith. And do you know that if Noah hadn't lived by faith and built an ark by faith and feared the Lord and been moved with godly fear of things being divinely warned of that he hadn't yet seen, if he didn't live by faith, do you know, we wouldn't be here today, humanly speaking. Why? Because when Noah and his family went on that ark, we were with him. If I can use this as an analogy, an illustration, we were in him. We were in him and his family. We've all come from Noah and his family. We were in his genes, if you like. We were there. We were there. We were there potentially. We were there. Excuse me a second. We were there. We were there in potential. We were ready to come. And so his act saved many, many, many people. So living by faith is not just about ourselves. When we step up in faith, we influence others. We have a legacy of faith. Whatever we do together as a church by faith, following the commands of Christ and the Great Commission, whatever we do as individuals in our individual calling and gifting by faith, it affects those that are around us. It affects those in our life group. It affects our family members. It affects. Now, it's the faith that affects people. I think sometimes Christian parents need to realize it's not just about schooling your child in Bible stories and curriculums, as good as that is important, but it's not just that, it's faith. What do we teach our children about living by faith? What do we instruct our children too much, like instructing somebody in the law? This is right, this is wrong, this is obedience, you must do this, this is what God wants. All these things are fine. It's called the training of a child. But do we bring up our children in understanding some of the things that we're focusing on right now? What faith is? Its evidence, its substance, its reality, how it works, the delay between believing and receiving. Do we do that? Or are we schooling them in Christian morality without schooling them in what it means to live by faith? I'm just asking us to think about it. But his faith affected his family, and he saved them, and thank God, because his family were our ancestors. What we do in believing God together and as individuals affects people around us and can affect generations. It can affect generations. It can put things in motion. So Noah didn't just build an ark. What he did, we're reaping the benefits. Every single human being, since the ark, since the flood, can say a big thank you, even if they don't believe him. They should say a big thank you to Noah and his family, because without Noah, none of us would be here. And then finally, in these thinking about faith, it says, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became an heir of righteousness, which is according to faith. So he left the world without any excuse, left the world without any excuse. And we as Christians, as we live by faith, we should leave the world without any excuse. We can't force people to get saved, but we can leave them without an excuse. You know, Jesus said that there are people that have more of an excuse than others. And he said to places where he personally visited, Bethesda and Chorazin, and he said, you know what? You're so without excuse. No one has any excuse. Okay, we understand that when it comes to not receive. But he said, but you, the miracles I've done in you, if I had done those miracles in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented in sackcloth and ashes. If I had done the miracles that I've done before you, in Sodom would have repented. In fact, Sodom are going to rise up against you and condemn you because you have no excuse, even less excuse. They don't have any excuse, but you have even less excuse because of everything. You know, somebody in a foreign country that has no access to Bible, where Christianity is not allowed to be shared on the, you know, and they still have no excuse. But it's a very different, isn't it, than someone who lives in a city in the Western world with plenty of Bibles that they could read, plenty of access to the gospel, churches around, you know, that they're even more without excuse than others, because they have so much there. It's all there to show them. And so Noah condemned the world and gave them no excuse. And I think that's part of living by faith, is that people shouldn't have no excuse. Unfortunately, sometimes non-Christians use the excuse of Christians who don't live like Noah did. They don't live by faith. The Christians are worse than the non-Christians sometimes. You know, Christian businessmen that cheat, or Christian people that don't pay back their debts, and all these things, or that go to court, and all these sorts of things, and in the end, you know, they say, "Oh, I'm not going to become a Christian, thank you. I've met some," and you get people saying, "Oh, you know, don't judge the church, don't judge Jesus by the church. You know, we're Christians, but we're not perfect." Well, that's true, but come on, we shouldn't be in a place where we have to say, don't judge God by the church, don't judge Jesus by the church. The church is a terrible mess here, or that the church, we know that Christians are hypocrites and everything like that, but don't judge God by the church. No, actually, we need to grow and mature, and to say, and people should be able to judge God by the church, and their judgment should be, these people are different, these people are godly, these people are like Noah. It's not that we should make excuses anymore for the church and say, don't judge Jesus by his church, because the church is so rotten, worldly. But what we should be doing is growing so that people can look at the church and say, wow, somebody's worshipping God. So there's a lovely picture of Noah with many little golden nuggets for us to take into our lives. Thank you, Pastor Dory.